Hey guys, so we are doing our next chapter, which is Genesis 2, and we're going to go through this quickly because I learned Instagram only wants me to have like 15 minutes for a video. So in Genesis 2, the first thing that I want to bring out is in my Sefer, the Hebrew scriptures that I read, you will see a lot a symbol which is an aleph and a tav. And if you know anything about the Hebrew alphabet, which I encourage you to learn, is first of all, Hebrew reads reverse from what we're used to. It reads from right to left, and we're used to reading from left to right. And so, Aleph is the beginning, it's the first letter, and Tav is the last one. And so, in essence, it means everything, everything within, from beginning to end. Aleph and Tav, like from A to Z, like we would say. So whenever you see the symbol or the word for Aleph and Tav together, it really means everything is all inclusive. Someone once said that Revelations is really, it tells you like the beginning and the end of the book, which would make sense then if Hebrew reads from right to left, from the back to the front, and Revelation is in the back. We should look at the last book for some context to the beginning or how things are going to begin. So that's just interesting. So I wanted to start with when the Father speaks about in verse 2, and on the seventh day Elohim ended his work which he had made, and he rested. I think that's so interesting because when we think about his work, we're thinking about the creation. But what if, just like we hear, everything was already done? He completed all of his work. He already saw the entire world and how everything was going to occur in the beginning when he made it. So he made everything, even what's coming in the future, from when the Messiah comes again to when he redeems his lost to judgment. He's created everything. So all of that was already created, and then he rested. And that was before the events unfolded. And I think that that's so interesting. And not only that, but when we look at it as the seventh day, sometimes we have to know that day is not just 24 hours like we consider day. A day to him is different, and sometimes it is a 24-hour period, or from the rising of the sun to the setting, or how you calculate a day, because some cultures calculate day different. But day sometimes is just a period of time. So like when the older people say back in my day, we hear that. So just remember that day is not just a 24 hours. It's just the completion of the task. Like he was creating heaven and earth in a day, in a period. He created the vegetation. He created the living creatures in a period of time. And so each of those periods was the day for that thing. The fifth verse, he says, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. For Yahuwah had not caused it to rain upon the earth. So when he's saying this, he's talking about the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created, in the day, the period that Yahuwah Elohim made them. So he's saying here that the herbs and the seeds and the fruits, they were not even on earth yet. It was before they were on the earth, yet he had already created them. Very similar to the scriptures that say, and I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. Our spirits were already in existence. We just didn't have that physical vessel yet here on earth. So we have to remember that also. Creation already existed. It just had not been formed down here on earth. And I thought that that was amazing. And then right after that says, and there was not a man to till the ground. A few things there. Remember back in the first chapter when I was mentioning how he said, and he made them male and female, and that was before he even mentioned Eve's creation. And now he says here, there was not a man to till the ground. So he's not just saying there was not a man, but there was not a man to till the ground. I think that's pretty key to look at, because he gives this man that he's identifying purpose. So this is the first man that he's mentioning a purpose for. There was no man to till the ground specifically. And I also want us to notice here that man had a function. He had a function to till the ground, to work the ground. Man was not idle. Man didn't just come leisurely, kick it, he wasn't doing anything. Man had a purpose always, from that point. So then we go to Genesis 8, the 8th verse. And Yahuwah Elohim planted a garden eastward in Eden. I thought that was interesting because it's a garden. It's where you grow crops. It's where you have flowers. And gardens need the sun for their nutrients. And the sun rises in the east. And I thought that that was pretty neat that he put it there. And one more thing I skipped over, where I was saying how the Father said he knows you before you were formed in your mother's womb. Well, we'll get to that. So I'll go back. So then we have down here Genesis verse 15. Again, man has been created with a purpose. And Yahuwah Elohim took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to guard it. To dress it and to guard it. But what was he guarding it from? I haven't heard of any threats yet to the garden. So he was dressing it and he was guarding it. But what was the threat to the garden? That's something to ponder. So man is made from the earth, and woman carries all the descendants of man in her womb because she is also formed from that same earth. We're formed from earth. And so that's why women can carry life within us, because we are made of the same thing that man was originally formed from. I think that's super dope. Then we have in verse 19, out of the ground Yahuwah formed every beast and brought them unto the man to see what he would call them. And whatsoever man called every living creature, that was the name thereof. Again, man had a function, but not only did he have a function, the Father brought the function to him. Man didn't have to go seek out these beasts to name. The Father brought the beasts to him and gave him work to do. I have been in a period where I was just spinning my wheels trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. And I'm just reading the scripture and realizing that the Father will bring you your life's work. You don't always have to just go on a mad manhunt for it. The word says, seek ye first the kingdom, and all the other things will be added unto you. And right here, it shows you that he brings you the work that he wants you to do. So here, again, man is not living idly. He has a mission to name things, and that includes his children. Men should be naming their children. I know a lot of times women want to have a hand in everything. That's just the way that we've gotten away from scripture. But if you look at it, it has been man's job, his role, to name the living things. And so when a man has children, it is also his job to name them. They are of him. That's why we also carry the last name of the man. So after that, the Father gives the command that in 17, going back up, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat of it. For in the day that you eat of it, therefore surely you will die. That was interesting to me, and the serpent, as we will hear later, questions this. But this is a tree of knowledge of good and evil. So there's some good in that. Why wouldn't the Father want us to know right from wrong? Why wouldn't he want us to know good? And I feel like once we know good, we have this self-righteousness about us that makes us dangerous. We feel like we're able to judge things. We feel as though we're able to dictate, and we take on roles that are not inherently ours, and it's also open to interpretation. And so once we have this knowledge that we like to think we have, which is worldly knowledge, we get ahead of ourselves. And I feel like that downfall is what the Father saw, and that's why he wanted to protect us from even going in that direction. And then it says, in that day you will surely die. Just like the wages of sin is death, Just like if we partake in dangerous activities, we might not die that day, but in that period, in that day, in our day, we will perish for those things. And so again, not just that 24-hour period, but in the time period of your life, in your day. And just like, honor your parents so that your days may be long. And then in Genesis, verse 18, he says man should not be alone. It's not good that man should be alone. And he causes man to fall asleep because of this in verse 21. And there, I always am interested because all of the animals had pairs. And so he may have been seeing them interact with each other. He may have been seeing them breeding, mating and stuff. And he had that curiosity. And because he had nothing to mate with, the father did not want him to fall into bestiality, because then he was going to go and say, well, what am I going to procreate with? He's human. He has these desires, these urges, and bestiality is an abomination. And so the father had to give him something because it was not good for him to be alone. And so sometimes we have to read in there and see what's really happening at this point in the scripture that is causing the father to take preventative steps so that man does not contaminate himself. And so he does make woman for him. I think that it's interesting that woman is formed from man's rib. I think that's a great conversation point. What is that? I know that the rib protects the heart. It is a protective force in our upper torso. And so I think it's really interesting that that's where he takes a piece of man to form us. I think that's a really interesting part that we should also discuss. And then at the end, of course, it says, and they were both naked, the man and his woman, and were not ashamed because they didn't have that extra knowledge to give them any inhibitions. We were free. We were honestly free. We were free from, insecurity. We were free from judgment, free from ridiculing each other. Just that freedom. And that's the way that the Father intended for us to be, just to commune with Him, to do the works that He had in His will for us to do without anything interfering. Not only were they not ashamed, but they were just in the spirit. They were exactly as they were created to be. So those are the things that I saw in Genesis 2 that I think sometimes people overlook. Great discussion pieces. Don't forget, if you have any questions or anything that you want to add to this, comment below. Subscribe to the channel. We'll be going into Genesis 3 this weekend. And let's talk about it. Have a good one.